In this video, we are going to take a look at a few reasons why your floor joist or ceiling joist might have gaps underneath them in between the top of the wall framing and the bottom of the joist. And what you can see here is a situation where everything is nice and tight because all of the lumber lengths are the correct sizes and there is no deformity in the lumber or in the building foundation. Everything we're looking at here is nice and straight. However, that won't be the case if the joists are crowned. That's what we're dealing with here. And of course, this is going to be one of the problems you could run into, and even one of the more common problems you're going to run into. Now, we went ahead and looked at the outside. Let's go ahead and take a look at another common problem, a gap between an interior wall, top of an interior wall framing plate, and the bottom of the ceiling joist. And the reason for that would be the crown joist. We could also have a joist that is crowned in the wrong direction, and that would look something like this. So two problems that we could have that would be easy to explain with a flat building foundation. However, to find anything else, we're probably going to need to create a level line all the way around the perimeter of the building. And that can be done by using some string and a level. And I do have other videos on how you can put a nail at one end of the building like we're doing here, and then either using a water level or a regular level. I would prefer using a water level or a builder's transit, or even a laser operated tool that you might be able to purchase or rent from your local rental yard. And in our example, we're going to measure up 1 foot. We're going to start at one corner of the building and work our way around the building. And I do have other videos on that also. Let me know if you can't find them at our website or on YouTube. And I'll be glad to provide you with more information about that. Now, you can always create a story pole. That's what I did here. A board with some marks on it and another board that I went ahead and attached to it, so that we could rest the story pole on top of the framing plate, like we're doing in this example here. So not too difficult of a tool to build, and something like this will definitely speed up the process instead of measuring. A lot of times when you measure something, you might forget the measurements or confuse one measurement with another measurement, creating problems with your measurements. And one of those measurements will be the string line that is level. And if the building foundation is already messed up around the perimeter of the building, then you could just simply take a high or a low spot in that building and then use that measurement to deduct any of the other measurements. So our story pole is going to have a block at the bottom, a line for the string that is going around the perimeter of the building, and you can have a line for the top of your joist, top of the floor sheathing, but we're going to need one for the framing plates. So we're going to need to do something like this so that we can check these key components of the building. And that'll make a little more sense by the time you're done watching the video. So let's go ahead and go back to the crowned joist, where we're going to have everything looking nice at the corners, or at least one corner of the building. However, that won't be the case when we move a little farther away from the corner to find out that our framing plates are still in good shape, but the top of the joist isn't. And by understanding what we're looking at, you're going to be able to figure out whether or not it's the building foundation, the wall framing materials, or the ceiling or floor joist. So again, everything is looking good at the bottom here, lining up with our string. It's just not working out at the top, suggesting that it's the joist. And if we had a situation where our lines were a little bit lower, our framing plates were a little bit higher, then we could assume that there could be a problem with the wall framing or the building foundation and not the joist. Next up, let's go ahead and flip the joist over to where we have the crown down. And everything looks good in the center. However, it's not going to look as good the further away from the center we get. And if you are dealing with a rim joist, I'm sure you could cut the joist into sections or snap a line from one point to the other point and then cut the sections that are deformed to straighten the top of the floor, and then use wedges or shaped lumber to fill the area underneath the joist. Next up, let's go ahead and go back to a straight floor joist. However, we're going to have some problems here with our lines again, not lining up with the top of the floor joist. They're lining up with the framing plates, suggesting that we could have a problem somewhere else. So in this example here, we know that the joists are straight. You might not be able to see that on your project, but you will be able to see it once you go down to the lower section and take a look at where the string lines up with the line on your story pole. We can see here where it's not lining up very good, suggesting that we have an upside down crown or a bow in the building foundation, which is exactly what we have because I drew it that way. I know exactly what we have here. So again, we have a situation where the level string around the perimeter is not lining up with our story pole line. And if the line on the story pole was above the level string line, then you would have a crown in the building foundation. And when you run into this, there's a very good chance that you have a building foundation problem. Just keep in mind that you could have a problem somewhere else. So again, we don't have a problem with the corner. Our problem is in the center, and you could see the bow here or the dip in the center of the foundation, suggesting that we will need to adjust the framing somehow. And this can be done by cutting individual studs to the correct height so that we can straighten the top framing plate out. And that's really the key to this video. Using the strings and other level lines throughout the building to figure out the low and the high spots so that you can compensate for them. Next up, let's go ahead and head over to the interior wall where we're going to set the story pole on top of the framing plate again and see if it lines up with the line here. It's not. Again, suggesting that we have the same dip in the building foundation that we have on the outside of the building. And we're using the string and the story pole line again to figure that out. And you can put a string wherever you want. If you have the string around the perimeter that is level, then you're going to be able to use that string and line it up throughout a variety of different locations in the building. Like we have here, we have a string going from here to here and two more going from here and to here. And if you want to check the location of a post, again, we can do the same thing with our story pole, or we can simply measure from the top of the string to the top of the floor foundation. And in a situation like this where we might have a 1/2 inch difference here, all we need to do is add a 1/2 inch to the post. And once you have done this, you've created a flat upper floor. Then there's a good chance the floors above it will be level also. You're not going to need to check it again. Next up, let's go ahead and take a look at a 2-story house and kind of prioritize the areas that are important. And that will be the perimeter of the building, even this wall here. And there's no reasons why you can't get those areas straight and level. It's the areas in between that are often difficult to create a flat and level surface for. So as long as the outside walls are flat, straight, and level, then we can focus on any interior walls that are going to be perpendicular to the floor joist or sitting directly underneath the floor joist like we have here. And of course, any locations where we're going to have posts and beams. So in my opinion, every wall that we're looking at here is going to need to be at the correct height because we don't have any walls missing the joist. So now that we know that, let's go ahead and remove the floor joist and then remove all of the wall framing components. We're going to start with the exterior plates. And you can bolt the plates down to the floor slab or make sure that there are no gaps between the spacer, framing plates, and the foundation for this point and this point, because you're going to be using that point to measure the distance between the top of the string and the top of the framing plate. And in our example here, we have an 1.5 inch spacer plate. That is exactly what we should have when we go to measure the other points along the string line. So for example, if I have an 1.25 inch measurement here, that's going to tell me that this section is 1/4 inch high, and I will need to lower my wall framing studs 1/4 inch. So not too difficult to figure out here what I'm doing to check the floor foundation, and most builders don't do something like this. They just hope everything's going to be close enough and leave it at that. This would be something for the true perfectionist. And trust me, to straighten something like this out could be a lot of work. And you might need to extend some of the framing plates like we did here. Remember, this was a doorway. The plate stopped over here so that we could get a straight line for this part of the building over here. And don't forget that you can put these in different locations. I can use it to check this wall here, and I can use it to check any other wall I want to also, or other areas of the building that I might be concerned with. And even though some of these methods might not be practical when building a new house, they might be practical while remodeling one or making repairs to one.